When did you start playing basketball?
Julia, I started playing when I was probably 5 years old. I can remember I grew up in Manalapan, New Jersey. I was a Jersey Shore kid, and I can remember getting the basketball in my hand, trying to reach the rim and throw it up there. And as a 5 year old, you're probably throwing it underhand and hitting the bottom of the rim. But from an early age, it was almost like a bottle for me.
When did you realize that you were going to be so tall? When did that
I
growth
think
spurt
it was
happen?
I think it was my junior year. And so my dad is tall. My dad played college basketball at the University of Virginia. He was 6'9". My mom's Sicilian and she's a giant at 5'6". So I knew I had the chances of being tall. I just didn't know what it looked like. But my sophomore year in high school, I was 6 foot and I was the point guard on the team. I couldn't jump over an iPhone at the time, but yet I played the position as a point guard, which was a tremendous confidence build for my story, professional, basketball. But I think my junior year, I gained about 3 or 4 inches and I was like, okay, it's on. I was a late bloomer, and I'm like, I may get there. I may get to like 6'8", 6'9".
What was it like playing basketball in the 80s and 90s?
The 90s was a blast. I think it was a competitive environment. It was hard nosed. It was tough. It was drill. It was aggressive. If people played and remember that 90s generation of professional basketball, it was a war. It was a battle. Too physical, let's just say. That's why the game changed, and you got people like Steph Curry in there opening up space and creating avenues. But at the time, it was brutal. It was physicality, and it was very position centric. As now, the game just free flows, has a lot more open space, open concept. I would have thrived in today's game. I felt that back then I was kind of in between positions when I hit the professional marks. But I think that's the style of play it was. And so you grew tough. You had to get a tough mindset to get through that.
I mean, that was kind of a time period where we weren't talking about mental toughness. So, what were your coaches telling you about how to stay tough and like hands on the ball at all times? Like what was the conversation about mental toughness?
Well, I had the joy of working with Coach Bob McKillop, Davidson College, and he's a Hall of Fame coach, and he coached Steph Curry and a lot of great players that came through the program. And he was a New Yorker, and his mindset was like, you can't be soft like vanilla ice cream. And his style of approach at that time was very difficult and challenging and confrontational in a way that challenged your mindset. So it could wear you out. You can get disappointed. You could feel like quitting, giving up. There was just such an edge to how he coached. And if you didn't evolve and get tougher in the way you thought about things, you got swallowed up. And Julia, there was definitely parts of my college career where I got swallowed up. I got swallowed up in my mental health, got swallowed up in my mental self, and I really struggled through different periods in my college. But I believe that from the big lens of life, he built a toughness and resiliency in me that I didn't have coming out of high school. I think where you see the switch today is there's a lot more tenderness in how people and coaches are having to connect and relate to players. There's a tenderness that is evolved, and that's getting more awareness around mental health and awareness around how to be more compassionate and empathetic. So there's a strength to that. What I do find is somewhere there's a balance, somewhere the pendulum may swing too much to empathetic and tenderness, and then you don't have a toughness or resiliency baked in. So I think we're seeing a swing, in our culture today. But I grew up in that toughness generation, man. Suck it up, buttercup, and get after it. That's all I want to talk about.
I mean, looking back on the way that you were coached, do you think it was right?
I think there was value to it. I think much like the way we grow up in life, we perceive and receive information in a way that we are processing our life. And was it right? I think there was tremendous value to it. Was it complete or whole? No. So value add to build toughness and resilience in us as people? Yes. Did it miss the mark in terms of having some level of compassion, empathy, and support for a person? Yes. So in that there was toughness, but just no tenderness.
When did you start to understand how to articulate the differences in those coaching styles?
Gosh, probably like about 10 minutes ago, Julia. No, I'm just kidding. I think to be able to navigate the personal growth journey we all go through, we have to be able to step back. When you're in the moment, when you're in the spot, especially when you're 18, 19, 20-year old, your brain's not even formally developed till it's 25. You're trying to navigate your goals and ambition, but you're also wrestling through yourself. And there's really not a clear path. And there's a lot of noise out there how to navigate yourself as a person. So I think when you look at the story of right, wrong, tough, tenderness, understanding when you learn those differences, I think it comes from time and awareness. If you've never experienced something, you just know that that's the way things are and should be. When you become aware there's a different approach or different way, you go, aha, maybe the way I was thinking or believing about anything wasn't the full picture of being whole and complete. And really the journey, if you're whole and complete, you just have a lot more power in your life and the way you approach it.
Who do you think was the most impactful coach to what your perspective is now?
I've had some great business mentors because after college, I played professional basketball for a few years. Then I got in the corporate world and I had a couple uh-oh bosses and a couple of wow bosses. And so there's ones I wanted to run from, which I learned a lot from. And there's bosses and leaders that I learned how to be an effective coach leader. But I think what I learned most and stuck with me consistently where I wrestled with, growing up, even though you would have thought, hey, this guy's progressing in sports and athletics. I was very articulate. I could basically had good education. I went to top school, top university. There was still something intrinsically missing in me. And I was wrestling with self-doubt, was wrestling with imposter syndrome, and just not a really strong belief about who I was or where I was going. And in that, I coach a lot to these days to young people, what I call my Zillennial fam, the Gen Z millennial crew that are on that line, how to really build a bold, confident life. And the coach I had who really gave me a glimmer of what that could look like was actually when I was 15 years old. It was my junior varsity coach. I went to a very competitive high school. 2 years older than me was a Hall of Famer, Grant Hill, who went to my high school. And so we had a very competitive approach to sports and basketball. And at 6 foot, as a sophomore, couldn't jump over an iPhone. I was primary forward position. Well, my junior varsity coach looks at me and says, "You're going to be our point guard this year." And I'm like wide-eyed, like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Like these guys are so much more athletic. They're faster than me. I can't make those decisions. I haven't done this before. But what he started to instill in me was a belief that I could do it. He's the first coach that really instilled affirmation in me, a tenderness, but an affirming belief in what was possible. And that confidence really kind of built in me. And I went on, even though I was on the JV team, it set me up for success. I was a point guard that year. We had a great year, 21-3. We won our district. And I really realized, oh, his belief in me elevated my belief in myself. And so that was a transitional period, I think. And the skills I learned just from a standpoint of basketball, when you grow to 6'8", 6'9", and you have those point guard skills, well, all of a sudden I have a college scholarship to a Division I school. So that was a key lesson for me. And I didn't fully grasp it at the time because I was young and I couldn't probably grab that till I was probably in my mid-20s or 30s about what coaching looks like and the value of believing in somebody and how you instill belief. But it was transformational.
It's crazy that you pinpoint that time period because the episode that I just put out about an hour ago, I was talking to an athletic director who spent a lot of her career in academy settings, working with high schoolers, specifically on mental health and mental skills training. And I asked her, what is the best time to introduce these students to mental skills like resilience, like confidence building? And she said 14, 15 was the perfect time to introduce these young athletes to mental skills training in order to set the building blocks of what would be their drive, determination, confidence, self-efficacy. And you're exactly pinpointing that time period as well. Why do you think that that is the right age to set those building blocks?
We absorb a lot at that age. We're looking for identity. We're looking for strength. We're looking for what are the markers that are going to help us get through life. So you sow those seeds of what I call personal growth at a young age, and they're extremely impactful. If I look back, Julia, the one thing I would give advice to a younger me or to the person who's on this listening is I would have got more clarity how to invest in my personal growth when I got into college. I would have understood that, hey, you need to invest in your personal growth and get clarity on life skills, leadership skills, clarity on you. And I coach a lot through that in my book I just came out with. It's called Unlocking Your Best Life and Leadership Growth Time. Say, what time is it? It's always growth time, baby. But in that, I coach through how to unlock your best self, but it's about personal and professional growth. And I would have recommended to young Quinn or the person who's a mission mover or passionate about making a change in this world, that you're 18, 19, or even if you're 25, 30, investing in your personal growth is paramount. And I think what you notice in the 15-year-olds, it's never too early to start in formation, to start teaching and coaching people on it. I think it's invaluable.
Let's talk about your recruitment to Davidson. When did they approach you? When did you actually sign your letter of intent? And then what was your college experience and your basketball career like?
So basketball in terms of recruiting, 25, 30 years ago was different. A lot is done through social media and through, AAU and club sports, which I've coached a couple of my kids through, which was a joy. But back then there was more camps. You went to certain camps and you were invited to certain camps, and there were high profile camps. And there was where college coaches would go meet you. So there was a camp in Pennsylvania called Five Star, and the old school people listening would be like, dang. And if you're not old school, you need to learn your basketball history and go check it out, what Five Star was, because it was the jam of a place to go and get invited to. But I went to that spot, Julia, and I had a really good campaign my junior year. And I played well at that camp. I played well against some elite talent. I remember Jerry Stackhouse was there. That's a name that people may remember back in the day. But I played well against them. And then I started getting visibility. And really, I started to get some offers after that camp. And that went into my senior year. And I was hesitant. I thought maybe if I played my senior year, I may have big higher opportunities. Davidson was a mid-level program. It wasn't like your ACC, and me being this big wild dreamer and wanting to play at the highest level and achieve the highest things and grandiose vision of self. And I thought if I waited, I may be able to get that opportunity, but I was also nervous of not committing and then having nothing in place. So I committed to Davidson College based upon the coaching and a coach named Matt Doherty. Matt Doherty was the person who recruited me. He eventually was the national coach of the year at North Carolina. And he won a national championship with Michael Jordan. He recruited me and I identified with him. So I thought it was a great fit. And thank goodness, because after I signed the letter of intent, about 2 weeks later, I snapped my ankle in half and didn't play almost my whole senior year. Came back at the end of my senior year, and we went to the state semifinals, which was cool, but we came up short, which is not. But it was a good story as far as getting into Davidson College. As far as my experience at Davidson College, I would say it was a mixed roller coaster. I would say my freshman year, like a lot of athletes, they probably have high visions and high aspirations. And when they realize how competitive the landscape is, and they're not really ready to perform at that level. And I really wasn't, mentally, physically. And that becomes a challenge. And that's where you can walk into discouragement, self-doubt, minor spaces or spells of depression, discouragement. And I walked through that my freshman year. And with that, I had to respond. And thank goodness something within me responded and got a little tougher. What I noticed is my experience at Davidson paralleled my college coach, who started to transform his own style of leadership my sophomore year. And I think this is cool for the audience, because as he transformed his leadership, the team performed extremely well my sophomore, junior, and senior years of college. And he issued like a value code. And it's something I coach to quite a bit in terms of understanding identity. I coach it in a section of growth time called the power of you, which is well worth your time to go read and get and dig into your personal growth. But one of the spaces is your values. And he issued a value code. And we slapped it on the wall. It was called TCC, Trust, Care, Commitment. And it's like that whole thing. You walk out of the arena, you tap it, and he began speaking to values as a way to drive behavior and change in results. So that started to catch on with the team, and we started to try to achieve value-driven performance, not just performance-driven goals. And that was the shift. And he went through a shift. I went through a personal shift through there. And it turned out to be a pretty dang good college career. We did come up short a few years of getting to the NCAA tournament, which was extremely discouraging. We lost some last second shots. But I felt like overall, I was grateful. It was 1,000 point score plus in college, and had an opportunity then to go to the NBA summer camps and get chances to play at the next level. So I think from a person who was 6 foot who couldn't jump over an iPhone, had a lot of self doubt, to at least get to that space, it was a win.
How did you overcome that self-doubt with the college support system that you had? I mean, I talked to a lot of guests now about how robust collegiate Division I support systems are. I mean, you have people in your athletic department helping you with everything. When you have more of a parsed down experience, even at a D1 school, how do you fill in the gaps yourself?
I think the challenge was I didn't, Julia. My life was still a roller coaster in college. And I know a lot of college athletes. Heck, my son's a college athlete right now. And there's a roller coaster that forms through the athlete, but it's also a thread that continues to spiral through their adult career profession unless it's really kind of rooted and addressed. So my college, I was still up and down, and I call it the performance cycle. And it's a terrible cycle to work in and live in. If you perform well, you feel good. If you don't perform well, you don't feel good. And then based upon those feelings, your mental clarity, your mental confidence, your confidence in you, it begins to be a roller coaster. And the journey of performance as a pathway to confidence is a shaky ground. But I lived in that. So there was days when we were winning and I was doing well. I felt great. I could conquer the world, and probably arrogantly so and self-centered so. But then there was also times where I didn't perform as well, where my goodness, the lows were lows. And then there was lonely nights. And then there's you're sitting there drinking some street wine, questioning your whole life. And so that's just part of what is real. In our generation that we see with those millennials, they're doing the same thing. Now, they might not be drinking alcohol as much, which is a unique trend among the next generation, but they're scrolling, and just looking for that extra fix or feel of dopamine. And so it becomes this uneasy, unbridled like race that they keep running, and they just never whole or at peace. And so I went through that in college. It wasn't really till after college I had some really unique experiences that really shifted or changed my life and the way I viewed personal growth and my growth story.
And we will get into that. But let's first talk about 1996, the NBA draft, your ankle injury, the LA Clippers. Work me through that period of your life, post-collegiately.
Most collegiately, I thought I had a chance to get drafted in the second round. It was the year of the exodus of the college student. And so it was the first year where you had sophomores, freshmen, juniors just going mad rush to the NBA. Most times people stayed 2 or 3 or 4 years. Well, that year, no. I mean, you had Allen Iverson come out, Kobe Bryant, Ray Allen, some really powerful names that kind of came out in that draft. And I didn't get drafted, and from there was a little bit of disappointment, but at least I knew I was on the radar for my dream or my goal of playing in the NBA. What happened next was I got drafted in the first round by the CBA, which for the peeps on the show today, that was like the G League back in the day. There wasn't all these leagues. There was one league. It was called the CBA, Continental Basketball Association. You played in these godforsaken Midwest towns, God bless them, but you played in them like Sioux Falls, South Dakota, love you, but it was freezing as all hell out there, and I would never want to go back again. But you played in these towns, and that's where you learned to like get elevated to the NBA. And so you had people in the CBA that were like up on 10-day contracts, down on 10-day contracts. So there was still a hope there. I didn't want to go overseas and play. I had those opportunities. My dream and goal was to try to reach my potential. And to me, I felt like, wow, I've dreamed about playing in the NBA and achieving this heightened success and all the self-imposed glory that I thought I wanted and needed in life. And that's what I was striving for. So that was the beginning part of it. And I was a colossal flop, like a colossal failure going from my first year trying out. I tried out for the LA Lakers, had a good time, hung out with Kobe Bryant and had a lot of fun talking smack with him, but he was exuberantly confident as an 18-year-old when he was making that team. He made the team, I didn't. I don't know if it was the best decision, but okay, they chose him over me. And I went after that to the Chicago Bulls and had a tryout with them. John Paxson was like, "Hey man, the NBA is not for everybody," and that was like, oh, oh, that was a dagger. And John Paxson, if you know his game, he made his mark as a shooter, and really he found an isolated role. And I'm like, wow. So I wasn't probably ready to give up on the dream, but I was saying I should at least give it a shot in the CBA. And then that became a disaster in my mind. I was basically out in Omaha, Nebraska. I was at the end of the bench. At that point, I'm disconnected from the familiarity, the comfort, the support of college bros and college teammates. It's a total different culture in the professional world than you have when you're in the college world. And the college world, at least Davidson, was a close-knit kind of community. It's like, I've still got bros from that team. Professionally, it was cold and disconnected, people out for themselves. And I spiraled even mentally during that period of time.
So I saw the Omaha Racers, the Idaho Stampede. What was the Sioux Falls team called?
Well, they were called the Skyforce. I didn't play for them, but we used to
Okay.
visit there and play. And if I could get out of a plane there quicker, faster, I would.
I've been to Sioux Falls, South Dakota one time, and I'm good. So I get what you're saying. But just those two teams for the CBA, right?
Correct. Well, I played with the Yakima Sun Kings as well. So
Okay.
my timeline for you, Julia, is my transformation happened during my first year in Omaha. And it was a dark place that I got to. And I was wrestling with some internal like demons, and I was wrestling with myself. Part of my backstory is I have a father who was a strong-willed, determined person, worked hard, a corporate exec, but man, alcohol was this thread that kind of crushed through our family. And there it comes from there, anxiety, stress, depression, and your coping skill is to turn to alcohol. And that was something I was resisting, but finding myself being drawn to as a way to cope with life. And that's why I would go back and say, hey, personal growth and understanding where and how to grow your life is so important when you're in that spot. It's so imperative. Get support, get coaching, get into your growth time. But in that, what happened was in that dark space, I had a roommate who came through the road, and he became more of a mentor for me. And he asked me a question that really changed my life on a number of fronts. And it was more of a faith-based question, Julia. He asked me, hey, where are you in your life with Jesus? And I said, well, I got enough issues and challenges going on. I think I'll get to that later. I mean, a very good answer, right? But what stuck with me about was with faith or belief, I didn't know what I believed. I just didn't know what I really believed about life, about faith, about myself, who I was outside of basketball. If that wasn't it, then who was I and where was I going? And it raised this whole arena of what do I really believe? And I think every young person, middle-aged person, and some people I've coached in their 40s or 50s are still learning to really challenge what they believe and really get to some base truth of convictions of why they believe it. Well, my growth time story started that time. And I got into a growth journey. And really, the crux of it was I got rid of self-focus and let my pride ego go. And it's something I coach to quite a bit, no matter where we are in our human journey, is I got more of the power of you released by not being as self-focused and not letting my pride ego virus, as I call it, sabotage me. And what happened was, as I went on this growth journey within myself and within my faith, my confidence just started to skyrocket. I mean, it was like a different person on the basketball court. I was able to be more resilient when adversity came. I was able to move past mistakes faster, quicker. And before you know it, I signed an opportunity in the summer league that year in 97, the summer with the Milwaukee Bucks. Performed extremely well in the summer league, and then bam, I had signed a contract with the LA Clippers, and I was getting ready to arrive before more adversity struck. But it was such a transformational journey. I realized that how personal growth and getting into that is so powerful. And probably can't over index that for your audience. If I had to share a message, if you want to unlock your best life and your best leadership skills, and we're all our leaders, If you want to unlock that, invest in your personal growth. There's a lot of noise out there, and I think my story of growth time helps you navigate that. But my goodness, jump into that. Play offense against emotional unrest, mental fatigue, stress, overwhelm, self-worth. Play offense and get into your personal growth so you're not consumed.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wrote down what brought you to Jesus in 1997. It was that kind of misdirection, I guess, that you needed to kind of figure out. Do you feel like that was a struggle to get back on the right path, or do you feel like it was pretty easy once you had kind of all your ducks in a row?
I don't think growth is ever easy, Julia. I think we're all pretty dang resistant to change. And the more people I coach, and I coach thousands of sessions, I'm more convinced that change is one of the fundamental challenges we all face in life. And once we can be open to growth and change, our world opens up. So I think it was a struggle point, but I think once I embraced it, and I would call it or term it the voice of growth. Once I embraced the voice of growth and not having a fixed mindset, it was still reps or challenges to navigate through, but it became so much easier. I didn't resist change as much because I was listening to what I call the voice of growth and embracing it.
How do you tackle those limiting beliefs and mitigate them?
It's interesting because I was, working with a client, recently, and they were wrestling with that same like notion, right? They were trying to identify what was their barrier and what was their obstacle. And in this case, they were starting and working through a business, and they were starting up a business, and they have this entity they're growing, and they have to hire and recruit team members, to be part of that, and hire employees with it. And then you got to hire, train people, and then eventually have to let go people if they're not doing their job. And in tough New Jersey person, like strong-willed, you wouldn't think there was an ounce of concern in how she attacked life. But what we navigated through, she really struggled in making some decisions because there was a limiting belief of fear. Fear was this limiting belief system of what would happen if she made this change. What would happen if she would make this move? What possible pain or challenge it may cause her. And I think that's a common theme within us as people. Fear is definitely one of the greatest limiting beliefs I coach to. And it's really masked. It could be really dark. It could be really not exposed, but it could be the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of not being accepted, the fear of not achieving the success you hope in life. There's a lot of fear. And once you're able to navigate people to be aware that that's what's driving their mindset and behavior, that's what's almost driving a lot of the anxiety and stress they're putting on themselves and their body and their mind. Then it's an awareness that says, now that it's out there, okay, what are we going to choose? Because the core premise of coaching is you have the power of choice. Are you going to choose to live in that fear? Or are you going to choose to take a risk and take a step of faith in a different direction? And so once people I find get clarity on what the limiting belief is and being able to name it, Julia, then they really go, oh, here's my choice now. I can either sit in it and I'm seeing all the pain that's caused from it, or I can move from this stuck place and say, hey, there's a vision of what's better, and I need to take a step of faith towards a different way of being or acting. So they are so intrinsic, the power of our beliefs. It's a whole section I usually coach through to really help people navigate where they are. And I'll add one more context to it, Julia. What I find is when we coach people, that the belief they choose is the direct correlation to the joy that's in their life. It's a direct correlation. When you choose limiting beliefs, invariably, you're going to walk through seasons of feeling stuck, stagnant, stressed, anxious, and then all the other cover-up things happen. You go out, you party, you social media, you recluse, you withdraw, you find unhealthy relationships to fill the void and need, and they stem from that. When you walk in an empowering belief system, you find that there's a level of joy that really starts to come forward in a person's life. And that's where breakthroughs happen. And when you live in that, man, what I love to see people I coach is they start walking in this bold confidence in life. They start walking a whole different bold confidence. And I've been through that journey, and I still have to fight the same journey today, just like you. You're going to fight limiting beliefs. I'm going to fight them. And if we win that battle, we're going to be in a better spot.
From a coaching perspective, what do you ask of your clients to get them to open up about the direction of their limiting beliefs?
The powerful thing about coaching, where if you're listening, you're thinking coaching most likely in the context of a sports or athletics, where the coach is giving you guidance, driving results, holding you accountable to certain activities. The true heart of coaching and going through getting certified through what I call the International Coaching Federation, which is the Harvard standard of credentials, is that coaching at its essence is about co-creating a relationship with the other person and allowing a safe place for them to explore themselves, their ideas, their thoughts. What is allowing them to move forward in a positive direction? What is not? What is the ultimate goal? And getting clarity on that. So coaching in essence is allowing a safe place. And as a coach, I typically ask a lot of powerful questions that really expose or help people think through where they are, why they're there. And then often you find they have the internal resources to get clarity. And then it becomes helpful to them to name the actions they want to go take. So it is a powerful transforming journey. And when I got into coaching and during the year of COVID, through my own professional casualty that I went through in COVID, I know a lot of us want to forget that period, but it was good. I worked with a coach, and the coaching session I had really evoked and created such a space or a container for me to open up and get my thoughts out and allow awareness to what I wanted and how I wanted it. And it was transformational.
Let's jump into the six growth zones. If you could split them up three and three and kind of introduce them that way, that would be amazing.
Yeah. What I identified in my own personal growth story, and I'll kind of share a framework of this. In COVID of 2020, unfortunately, I went through a massive crisis. It was what I call a life quake. I went through an unfortunate, painful relationship journey, and I went through a divorce, and it was a 20-year space, and it was unexpected. And with kids, it was just crushing, and there was a grieving place for that. At the same time, I went through the layoff of the corporate world. I worked with 24 Hour Fitness for 17 years. The industry shut down. They put us on, layover, so to speak. And then eventually they eliminated my job because they eliminated my role as they shut down the gyms that I operated. And in that, I was thinking, okay, I've already had clarity on my why. And my why in life, or my greatest motivator, was to grow and develop leaders' lives through impactful coaching, training, and education. So that was a clean mission statement that I worked on in my 30s, which I would have wished I worked on in my 20s, personal growth. But I just needed an outlet to say, how do I fulfill my mission in life if that was it? And what I reflected on, and this is how growth time really came about, was here I was in a very challenging environment and figuring out, how do I navigate this? How do I still live boldly confident when a lot of things are just crumbling around me? And I reflected on my journey over 20 years and all the growth lessons I had learned and identified growth gaps that I had to grow through as a person. And it became really sequential, which was really interesting, Julia. I could start to see in my own life for the 20 years prior how I had to go through different growth gaps in order to overcome myself or overcome leadership opportunities. And it became so clear, and literally it was one night at about 10 a.m. till about 4 a.m. in the morning, that between me and God, the whole thing just got downloaded on me, how to actually bring forth a growth pathway. And so the growth zones really are formulated through the journey I walk through. And like a lot of people, if you've been through something, if you've been through some pain, you're like, dude, I could stay stuck in it, or how can I make this my purpose in life? Much like what I love your story, you have identified a pain point out there in the world, and you're like, that's pain. How do I be a solution? How do I solve it? So in that place, Julia, I said, okay, these growth gaps that I saw in my life and had to grow through, let me kind of write about them and help people get clarity, which would take me 10 years. What if I consolidate this and help people get through all the noise, and they can grow through this in a year period. And that's where the growth time concept came out. It was like the next generation, they need a clear path. Like you're going to climb a mountain of personal, professional growth. There's so much freaking noise out there. There's so much noise. There's so many TikToks. There's so much. It's like, what's a clear path that you could put some hooks in? And I think simplicity is powerful, especially how we operate as people. So that began the emphasis to say, okay, how do I address these growth zones then? And the book's written like a coaching fable. I think the book's more like a message to your generation and a resource, because there's growth steps. But it's written as a coaching fable of a person who's navigating finding himself as a professional athlete, to going through adversity, and then to getting in the corporate culture and world. And it's his story. And he meets up with Coach G, who's the head of Max Potential Academy. And this figure has to learn navigating himself and getting comfortable trusting a coach called Coach G, the ultimate life coach, and how he trusts that relationship to further his personal growth so he can live a bold, confident life. And the growth zones that get introduced, the first one that gets introduced is the one that we all start with. It's called the power of you. And the power of you at its core is about helping someone get their identity strong. And we know our culture is wrestling with identity. We're wrestling tremendously with identity. And it's the one biggest mark that we don't have clarity on. We tend to not have an anchor for our mind, our soul, and our spirit. And so the power of you is about getting clarity on your identity. And when you gain clarity, you gain convictions. When you have convictions in life, you build confidence. So the power of you kind of frames it there. And there's a journey which I coached you quite a bit. I call it humanity plus divinity equals 100% power of you. So how you really get clarity on your self-growth and your God growth, how they merge together to get the strongest sense of you and your person, your mission, and your values is extremely a game changer. The next thing I identify with, we already kind of talked about it, Julia, is the second growth zone as this character navigates, is when adversity hits, when struggles come, what are your beliefs? Like the power of your beliefs. And it's really that war, that battlefield where we've got to win. We've got to win and be strong. We've got to win the power of our beliefs. So it coaches through limiting beliefs and empowering beliefs. The third growth zone that took me a while in my own personal life to really kind of get a hold of was really how to show up. Like how to show up, not just show up for work or show up for your career or show up on the basketball court or the sport, but how to really show up your best. And that really relates to the power of personal liberty, how you gain a freedom for yourself internally that allows your best authentic self to come out. So those kind of growth zones were growth gaps. And I'll say this, Julia, the dopest thing, the coolest thing was that I knew it had built something in me going through those growth journeys, but that's just my experience. But when I started 5 years ago coaching people through this, that's where the magic happened. That's where I saw people get mental clarity, life skills, career advancement. They started to change and match their mission where their money would, like matching a mission that would make them money. And the internal strength. When I started seeing that happening in people's lives, I'm like, this is fire. Like this is, your generation say this is lit. Like it is lit. It is like dope, right? And so it would communicate that. And I'm like, wow, there's something really here. It's not just my experience that I'm putting together. As I coach to it, it's changing people's lives in the world and their careers. And I'm like, let's keep going. Let's get this message out. And then to answer your next question about the growth zones of leadership, that came through like growing through corporate leadership and having battles and having awareness, how you grow as a leader and how you step up as a young leader, young professional, and what are the things you really need most to navigate through leadership. So what we coach through in there is the power to the people, and coaching the power to the people is about ownership and empowerment. And we coach through within that growth zone about ownership and empowerment. And then what I really layer in deep is the mindset that is working for ownership and the mindset that's working against ownership, and how to identify that in yourself and how to identify it in others. The next layer we coach through, this character as he goes through his journey, is how do I drive a high performance team? Got a team. What's going to make a high performance team? And in that, I coach through like the what I call the performance wheel. The performance wheel is like three little spokes on a wheel, and the stronger you are each part or spoke of the wheel, the faster the wheel spins, the better results your team gets. And so in there, there's a great thing about how to become a coach leader as an identity as a leader. There's a great space where the person has to learn, the character has to learn how to navigate people, process, and productivity. So there's a cool performance wheel there. And that's a growth story. And then the last growth zone, Julia, is basically the power of 2020 vision. Like how you communicate as a leader vision, how you communicate focus items, how you communicate and build team vision, how you speak to the vision, and how that actually helps you navigate better results. And it's crazy because I coach probably 40 different small business owners at the moment. And within that, those principles or those growth gaps and growth time, it's what I coach those people through. If you're a young leader, it's getting clarity and getting coached through those areas that will completely elevate your game. So it's been awesome, whether it's group coaching, individual coaching through those growth zones. I find it's just been really powerful to see measured results and change in people and change in their leadership. So I got to take a sip of water because that was a lot.
I mean, that was a an intentionally loaded question. How do you see your clientele demographic internalizing the growth zones differently based on the stage of life that they're in? I mean, like, say a youth athlete versus a business exec, for example.
If you're a business leader, you've probably gone through some different layers of personal growth. And I think there's a different layer of experience that teaches some emotional intelligence and emotional awareness, what we call EQ in the leadership world. I think the younger space I usually coach to, I coach more towards getting clarity and strength in your life, the life component of it. And then we navigate how that's impacting your career and how that's helping you show up, and then how you could show up different in your career space. So it's more what I notice the difference is the younger the millennial is in like their professional development or their personal, let me say their personal growth development, the more it's central. And I'm coaching a kid in college now and he's just making tremendous growth gains, but it's more centered in that capacity. As you progress and maybe you're in leadership or management, the emphasis changes and the coaching lens changes because you got to become more aware not only of you, but how you are impacting others. And that becomes a little tricky because self-awareness on your personal growth is one thing, but now when you have to become aware of the people you lead or manage or oversee and those interactions, there's a whole different level of deep coaching that goes into bringing awareness and clarity to that so they can make changes. And you do find too, Julia, like people, when you're younger, you're more malleable. Change is hard, but it's easier when you're younger. That's why they'll throw all those foreign languages at kids when they're younger, because they can pick it up and absorb it. It's like they're sponges. The older we get, the more rigid we become in our mindset and belief systems. And it's very harder, or it's very more challenged to really go in there and put a jackhammer to some of those beliefs and mindsets that change them. When you're younger, you're still open to hope and possibilities. And even though you think you know it all, like there's a part of you that goes, no, I really don't. And so you're more open to it.
I mean, that was about to be my next question. Who do you see internalizing the growth habits more?
I think the people you coach, because they're coming to your coach, you don't necessarily need a coach. Like you could definitely like need a therapist, and therapy is really different than coaching, right? Therapy will look at basically how you've processed life or life events and navigate you through the past and the emotions and the wellness of it. Coaching really starts from, hey, where are you today? Where you want to go? And along that journey, we're probably going to have to navigate through some of those barriers. That's part of it. But the older people get, if they're looking for a coach, if they're looking to be challenged, if they're looking for change, that's critical. It's much like the fitness industry. You can have a 40-year-old person, but if they want a change and they're going to start to go to the gym and work with a trainer, they're open to change. They're open to betterment, to being better, and they're open to see a different life that they hope or think they can go live. So usually if they're coming to me, they're not as resistive to change to a degree because they know they want something more. And if they could get the more they wanted, they wouldn't necessarily go with a coach. Or if they feel like I could go faster, further with a coach, which is obviously self-evident. I wish I had a life coach like me when I was in college or out of college. I think I would have expedited some of the pains and struggles I went through. I mean, who wouldn't, right? If you get the right coach who's helping you explore, navigate, and build you up and help you get clarity on your direction and your goals and shifting and helping you shape mindset, I, who wouldn't want that? But if you say, I'm going to go try to do it on my own, like there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers, well, you kind of get what you get. You get a longer learning curve. But I do find that people that come are more open to change because they're intentionally seeking out this coaching relationship where we could create something special together.
I think it's interesting when I interview sports psychologists on this podcast because the clientele demographic really sets a precedent in how they interact. These sports psychologists interact with their clients. What I've been seeing is that this younger demographic has been introduced to sports psychology very early. So when they are seeking out people like sports psychologists, like therapists, like coaches, that is not their initial entrance into what their mind can do. Do you see your services being that first step, or do you see that your clientele has been primed to already kind of know how to speak to their mental self?
Would say that there's a struggle bus for a lot of times when people that are coming to a coach to learn how to get express themselves clearly about their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, which is pretty common when they're coming to a coach or a therapist or a psychiatrist. It's almost like that ball that's all wound up and they're not sure how to unwind it. And so once they get into a safe space, they realize it's safe, psychologically safe, it's comfortable. Obviously, if they have the right psychiatrist, therapists, or coaches, there's good ones, there's bad ones, right? But I find that if they're able to unwind a little bit and the coach is helping them feel safe, that's where magic happens. And that's when it really does.
Do you think that mindset or behavior changes first?
I love that question, Julia. It's something I coached you. It's probably, I've said this, man, to so many people consistently when they're in a rut or in a transition. I coached you two kind of concepts, and it's worth writing down if you're listening, because this is a truism. I think you could take it like it's out of the Bible, but mindset changes behavior. Mindset changes behavior. When you think about any change you've made in life, how you're feeling or the direction you take, it didn't change until your mindset changed. When you woke up today, if you had a bad day, if you're frustrated, you didn't even change your behavior until your mindset shifted. Maybe you heard a song on the radio. Maybe there's something you got a call that uplifted you and your mindset changed. So then your behavior changed. You didn't start cussing at people when you're driving down the road then. You felt a little more whole. You feel more confident. When your mindset changed and how you're approaching your event, if you're a sport, you're an athlete listening today, if you're like, man, I'm just so dreaded to go to practice today. It's so difficult. I'm so tired. Well, guess what your behavior is going to emulate? You're going to be tired and fatigued and dragging. If it's not, I have to go to practice. Hey, I get the opportunity to go practice today. Already that mindset will change your behavior and what's going to come forward out of it.
Secondarily, which do you think is more important as the precursor to change?
That's that. Your mind is the most powerful kind of tool we have, and it's the most powerful freaking enemy we work against, right? And so your mindset is always going to dictate your behavior. It's always going to dictate change. What I
I
also
knew,
coach to though, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I would say that's one layer. The second layer that I would coach to is if mindset and your perspective you're taking changes behavior, your identity repeats behavior. Identity repeats behavior. The things you identify with and bond with, you're going to repeat behavior. The person who's like, man, I identify as a religious group or religious organization. That's my identity. Well, guess what? You're going to go to church. Hey, I'm a fitness person. I identify as a fitness person who cares about his health and wellness. Guess what? You're going to show up. If you're an Apple user and your identity is like I identify with Apple, you're going to buy all the Apple products and all the Apple support. Identity will repeat behaviors you take.
That was my last question for you. Is there anything that you think that I missed about telling your story? Anything you'd like to promote? Anything that you would like to, any additional tangential anecdotes you would like to take me on a ride for? Where are we going?
Where would you like to go? Is there any other place that I've shared that you go, huh, I'd like to go?
I
I
mean,
feel good.
I don't think so. I really like
Yeah.
your approach to mental skills training and the holistic human. Um, because everything that we learn in sport is transferable onto life. Which actually brings me to another question. What do you think is the best skill that you learn in sport that is transferable to life? The most impactful?
I think sports, the most impactful, at least from my perspective, is the teamwork. And I know if you're an individual sport, you still need to be part of a team and your contribution contributes to the overall team. But I think working together in the midst of conflict and struggle, which sports throws you in, and how to work together is paramount to personal growth, teamwork. It helps show up when you're married. It helps shows up in relationships. It helps shows up in the corporate culture, in your profession. If you're an entrepreneurial spirit on the call, if you're someone like you, Julia, who wants to continue to grow, you still need a team. You still need teamwork. And I think sports teaches you that in the midst of conflict. And we don't grow unless there's conflict or challenge. We don't. We're creatures of comfort.
Is there anything else that you would like to share before we get out of here?
I really enjoyed being on your show, Julia. I got to say that you light up like a Christmas tree as you share and go through this interview. Your smile's contagious, and I can tell you love what you do.
Yeah.
So no, I don't know if you put that on the show, but keep being keep being the mission mover you are, Julia.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think God's got a great plan for your life, and pursue it, chase it, make an
Amen.
impact.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
You have about a month until this goes live. If there's anything that you think of, hey, I'd like that included, or if there is some amazing thing that happens to you in the next month, send me a DM. I'll include it in the script. Other than that, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. Loved it.
Yeah.
I really
What do you
appreciate
think?
this.
Julia, from your perspective, I just look for feedback. I mean, that's why I say it's always
Yeah,
growth time. What is anything feedback for me? You know, my journey is to really where I'm at is to continue to get on podcasts and get the message out to help people. Like you're hosting the podcast to get your message out. I'm
great.
grateful that you gave me the opportunity to be on your podcast to help hopefully encourage your audience. Is there any feedback for me in the you've done a lot of podcasts. Is there any feedback for me where I can even elevate my communication or delivery or anything that comes
Honestly,
to mind?
no. I mean, you're very succinct, you're well spoken, you obviously know what you're talking about. You're speaking enough from anecdotes to feel like I know your story without like really getting into the weeds um too much, I think. I see how your life informed your business, which I think is important when you're talking anecdotally about what impacted you. No, I mean I feel like I have a good idea of like who you are and what your business model looks like. I
Yeah.
did I ask the right questions, I guess.
Like you did. I felt like you did. I felt like you
Okay.
gave me a lot of space, in some
Yeah,
regards. Yeah,
yeah.
you teed some up that like most interviewers don't tee up. And that's valuable, right? Because at least if you can have that out there, in the long run, I could always use those as snippets to share with people, right? I can use those as, opus clips and share them out. So that was extremely, valuable that you even asked that in those questions. And I felt like you still, which was great, you kept moving towards what you know your audience needs to hear. Like they are wrestling with mental clarity, overcoming mental hurdles, how you overcome those barriers, how you get support with it. I felt like I probably introduced, because I don't think that the athlete or even the young zillennial fully understands what coaching is at its core. So I did feel like taking some time to explain that becomes different for people, because most people have a vision of their coach and it's totally different than the experience of what a real coaching session looks like. So I think that question came across real well with it. So no, I think the questions were great.